Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. 자, 여러분 어떻게 강연 들으셨습니까? 인공지능 분야의 세계적인 기업을 운영하시고 또 세계적인 석학이신데 아마 여러분들도 오늘 많은 부분들 느꼈을 거라고 생각하는데요. 먼저 두 분께 좀 단도직입적인 질문을 드려보겠습니다. 한국에서는 얼마 전에 이세돌 구단 그리고 알파고와의 바둑 대결 때문에 인공지능이 굉장히 유명해졌습니다. 그런데 두 분께서 생각하시기에는 지금 인공지능의 발전은 어디까지 와 있고 또 앞으로 저희가 상상할 수 있는 짧은 미래, 예를 들자면 5년 정도 뒤에는 어떤 정도까지 인공지능이 발전을 할 것인지 차례로 좀 답변을 부탁드리겠습니다.
Sure. Okay, I'll go first. So what AlphaGo demonstrated was the power of a combination of techniques, some of which go back actually to the 1950s, the process of reinforcement learning, whereby a machine discovers how to behave by essentially winning and losing and then finding out which things win and which things lose. But the interesting thing about AlphaGo was that we went from a year ago believing that this task would take a decade to it happening within less than a year after that prediction. So the rate of progress is accelerating enormously. In the near future, I think we're going to see great progress on understanding language, which is, as I mentioned in my presentation, going to lead then to personal assistants, automated personal assistants that can be incredibly useful because they understand all of your interactions just as well as your husband or your wife does, and can remind you of things. And if you're late home, they can tell the kids to get on the bus, and all the complicated things that make one's life so difficult these days, they can help with. I also think that robotics is on the cusp of a revolution. Up to now, robots have been not very useful in settings like the home or a hospital because they've not had perception that's adequate to the unstructured environment of an ordinary household. And they've also lacked the dexterity, so the nature of a robot hand turns out to be really important. So the perception problem, I think, is pretty much solved now, and the dexterity problem of the hand is in the process of being solved. And then we will see an explosion of applications for robots in domestic, in the care for the elderly, in agriculture, and lots of other areas.
예, 하실 말씀이 굉장히 많으실 것 같은데 다음은 서른 박사님 답변을 좀 들어볼까요?
Yeah, the significance of this match cannot be overstated. The idea of machines that can learn has been around for a long time, but we always thought it's going to end somewhere over here. And now we took the hardest of all tasks and had machine learning beat the best human players. What that really means is, if any task for which you have a lot of data, if you have enough data and you have enough machines to crunch through the data, eventually the machines will be stronger than people are. And that affects almost everybody who does office work, or surgeons, / medical doctors, / lawyers, / pilots, / drivers, that do many, many repetitive things over and over again. We will be free of mindless, repetitive work and be able to unfold the true potential of humanity in creativity. What it does not mean is that we build a machine smarter than us. We are so multifaceted, we have such a diversion of ability to think. All these applications, from playing Go to medical diagnostics, are very narrow, targeted fields. So, for example, AlphaGo cannot play chess.
예, 머신러닝이 사람보다 더 큰 능력을 가지게 될 것은 분명하지만 그래도 사람만의 특유한 능력이 있다, 이런 말씀을 해주셨는데 그렇다면 이 인공지능의 발전이 인간의 삶에 가져올 가장 극적인 변화, 물론 긍정적인 변화일 수도 있고 부정적인 변화일 수도 있겠습니다만은 가장 극적인 변화는 어떤 것이 될 거라고 생각을 하시는지요?
So I think it's quite hard to say. One might say that the variance of the future, that meaning our inability to predict how the future is going to unfold, is at its greatest point in history. And I think, as I said, the advent of human-level AI in full generality would be the biggest event in human history. It would be comparable to the arrival of an alien civilization. You know, if somehow aliens arrived, superior civilization to ours, that would be a complete break in human history, and it would change things forever. And if we were told, if we received email from space saying, oh, you know, we're the superior alien civilization and we're going to arrive in 50 years, there would be consternation in the human race. We would be talking about this all the time, not just on SPS Today, but every single day. In the United Nations, governments would be worrying, how are we going to deal with the arrival of a superior civilization from space? And I think the same kind of importance needs to be attached to the question of the arrival of superhuman AI. It's impossible to say what it will be like, but one thing is clear. It gives us, if we do this well, it gives us a choice of a future that we can be proud of, that we can look back and say, yes, we made the right choice. We now have a society and a technology that is truly beneficial to the human race, if we do it right.
Yeah, so I'm an optimist, really an optimist. We've always built machines to advance the human race. 300 years ago, most of us worked in the fields and used our hands for moving soil around. And then we built machines that made us 1,000 times as effective in doing this. And while this might look like a threat in the onset, they really freed us of the burden to define ourselves through physical work and allow us to engage in mental work. Almost every technology we've built has the same effect. Planes can cross the Pacific Ocean faster than any of you can. Cell phones allow us to talk to people on the other side of the planet. They're literally breaking the laws of physics. And the same will be true for artificial intelligence. It'll take the deficiency in human thinking, in human memory, in human cognition, and put us into superpowers. I really believe that if we pair the human brain with an infinite learning machine that can read all the books and understand every moment of our life, we can eventually double our IQ and unleash an enormous amount of creative potential. Who of you would not like to spend more time on being creative and less time doing repetitive work over and over again? I think AI will be our savior to allow us to do much more to develop a human race that no one has even imagined could exist.
예, 아주 긍정적인 전망을 해주셨는데 이번에는 자율주행 자동차에 대해서 좀 질문을 드리겠습니다. 자율주행 자동차가 현실이 되면 교통사고도 굉장히 줄어들 것이다. 또 운전자들이 굉장히 편안해질 것이다. 이런 예측을 많이 합니다만 또 한편에서는 과연 이 자동차가 사고를 냈을 때 과연 그 책임은 누가 져야 되느냐라는 법적, 제도적, 윤리적 측면의 질문들도 지금 많이 하고 있는데 이 자율주행 자동차의 보편화에 걸림돌이 될 만한 것들, 어떤 것들이 있다고 보십니까? 네, 먼저 러셀 교수님이 답변해 주실까요?
Sure. So I think the responsibility will be 100% on the manufacturer. And I believe the manufacturers understand and accept this. And they know that if they don't accept it, then legislators are probably not going to allow them to be out there selling their vehicles. So that's a very simple answer. The other answer is, why are we not seeing self-driving cars already? And I think from my discussions with people who work in the industry, the problem is turning out to be a little more difficult than expected. The problem of seeing obstacles, of staying in the lane, of controlling the steering, and so on, have been solved extremely well. But every so often, the car gets itself into a situation where it doesn't quite know what's going on. Sometimes it will hand over control to the human. Sometimes it will actually make a mistake that can be quite terrifying for the human passengers. In order to solve these problems, I think the way that the car actually makes its decisions has to be more like the way AlphaGo makes its decisions. So AlphaGo is not provided with a set of rules on how to behave. AlphaGo takes every situation as a new situation for which it can project forward into the future the effects of different courses of action and then choose the one that's best according to a system of values that describe the desirability of different go positions. So that idea applied to cars would make them much more flexible and able to deal with a much wider range of situations than the systems currently can. That's a difficult technical problem, but I think it can be solved within the next 5 years.
예, 방금 이 지적하신 이런 문제 때문에 이 자율주행 자동차가 실제로 우리 주변에서 운행을 시작하는 데는 굉장히 우리가 상상하는 것보다 더 많은 시간이 걸릴 것이다. 아니면 어쩌면 불가능할지도 모르겠다. 이런 전망을 하는 분들도 계시는데 그 점에 대해서 어떻게 보시는지요?
Well, as a person who probably knows a thing or two about self-driving cars, I would say the technology is much more advanced than people give it credit to. I've been in self-driving cars that drive significantly better than I and anybody else can drive. When I left the team at Google, we were able to drive incident-free for more than 300,000 miles at a time. I challenge people to match this. In terms of responsibility and liability, I worry less about this. I mean, right now we lose 1.2 million people every year to traffic accidents. That is a huge number. Almost all these accidents are caused by the same thing, human neglect. People texting, people not paying attention. So if we could take the human neglect thing out of the equation, we could drastically cut the number of traffic deaths. My objective would be to cut it down to 0, so no one ever dies again in traffic, in which case the liability question is obsolete. But even before that, with a much lower volume of damage, of deaths, of personal damage, of property damage, I think in totality, the payments that we drivers have to give to the system will be reduced. And whether they be paid through personal insurance or through corporate insurance is an open question. I don't think it has a black and white answer, and we're going to figure it out. But in totality, all of us will pay less for insurance if fewer people die.
이제 뭐 매우 예민한 얘기긴 합니다만은 아마 업계에 계신 분과 학교에 계신 분의 생각이 조금씩 예민하게 차이가 나는 걸 아마 여러분들도 느끼셨을 텐데요. 다시 인공지능 얘기로 좀 돌아가 보면요. 이 인공지능이 확대되고 발전할수록 그 사람들보다 인공지능이 더 똑똑해져서 인간의 노동은 갈수록 필요 없어질 것이다. 다만 아주 예외적으로 창조적인 경우만 남아있을 것이다. 이렇게 되면 대부분의 사람들은 할 일이 없어지지 않겠습니까? 좀 전에도 제가 2020년까지 710만 개의 일자리가 없어질 거라는 전망이 있었다. 이런 말씀을 드렸는데 이런 시대에 대비해서 우리는 어떤 준비를 해야 할까요? 굉장히 걱정됩니다만은.
So there's really two questions there. One is something about the future timeline for these developments, and then the question of the future of the economy. On the question of the future timeline, I refrain from saying when it's going to happen because it's impossible to predict. It requires breakthroughs that haven't happened, and it's very difficult to say. It's not going to be the result of Moore's law gradually increasing the computational abilities of computer chips. It's going to be the result of conceptual breakthroughs. And I'm reminded of an interesting episode in history. So on September 11th, 1933, Lord Rutherford, who was the most famous nuclear physicist of his time, confidently stated that it would be impossible ever to extract energy from the transmutation of atoms. The next morning, Leo Szilard invented the nuclear chain reaction, and within a year he had patented a nuclear reactor. So that went from infinity to 16 hours. So for me to say it's going to take 10 years or 30 years or 50 years is ridiculous. So I think we have to be prepared. We don't know how long this is going to take, but we do know that there are important issues of control that have to be solved before it arrives, and we have to start working on them now. The question of the future of employment, it seems inevitable that machines are going to take over, as Sebastian and I have both said, the jobs in which people are used as machines. What is the nature of the future economy? Well, if you talk to economists, and I've tried doing this with, in fact, Nobel Prize-winning economists, their view is that we need more unemployment insurance, and governments need to provide a basic guaranteed income to all human beings. These are not real solutions. This is a counsel of despair, in my view. We have to have a positive vision for the future of the economy and the role of human beings in it. The only solution really is that each of us is going to be employed in providing individualized services to other human beings. In the way, for example, that a voice coach teaches individual singers to sing, we will have jobs of that nature, and this is inevitable. But how we get there and how that economy actually works to provide prestige and income and status for human beings who do well in those kinds of professions, we don't understand. And my solution is, in fact, to get the economists to sit down with the science fiction writers. The science fiction writers invent new economies and new structures, and the economists explain whether or not those would work. And gradually we figure out a future that's desirable. If we have a plan, if we have a future that's desirable, we can work out a transition plan to get there. Without that, there's no notion of a transition plan because there is no destination.
네. 자, 인공지능의 미래에 대해서 타임라인을 지금 설정하는 것은 굉장히 무의미하다, 이제 이런 말씀을 해주셨는데, 그러나 우리 인류가 바라는 것은 인공지능이 인류의 삶에 좋은 쪽으로 긍정적인 방향의 변화를 이끌어내도록 하자는 것이 우리 인류의 궁극적인 바람 아니겠습니까? 만약에 이런 나쁜 영향이 아니라 좋은 쪽에 인공지능이 많이 개발된다면 우리의 미래는 어떻게 될 것이라고 예상을 하시고, 또 하나 그런 경우에도 인간이 결코 인공지능에 소외되지 않고 더 잘할 수 있는 우리 인간만의 본질적이고 독특한 가치는 어디에 있는지 좀 설명해 주시겠습니까?
Yeah. I mean, the best answer I have is Udacity. And that's the company I built specifically so that we could help people stay current and be lifelong learners. I think there'll be a number of changes that we're going to be facing in society because of these developments. Number one, the idea of lifelong employment will be obsolete. And we see in the United States where the typical tenure has shrunk to about 4.5 years in a single job, where 26% of the United States citizens or workforce already work in on-demand type jobs like Uber and Lyft. But even more importantly, the era of one-time education during a lifetime is obsolete. I think we have to shift to a world where people keep learning and keep advancing themselves throughout their lifetime, which is the core mission of my company. I don't want to use this as an advertisement platform, but I believe we have to think through these changes, because if we stick with old models of employment, old models of insurance, of social services, and old models of education, we, the human race, will be unfit to meet our future.
자, 이제 시간이 많지 않기 때문에 마지막으로 아주 근본적인 철학적인 질문 하나 드리겠습니다. 기술이 너무나 빠른 속도로 발전하기 때문에 많은 사람들이 우리에게 기술은 과연 무엇일까, 이런 질문을 가지고 의문을 가지고 있습니다. 두 분이 보시기에 기술은 무엇을 위해서 존재하는 겁니까? 먼저 러셀 교수님께 질문 드리겠습니다. 너무 어려운 질문인가요?
Well, yes, it's a difficult question to answer. So we have used technology for thousands of years, essentially to make our lives better. Going back to the earliest Stone Age societies. So even pre-human societies were making stone tools to make it easier to, for example, to cut up meat. So they would make these stone axes and use them to cut up meat and to help in hunting. Interestingly, there's a place in Africa where they discovered how to do this. I think it was about 1.5 million years ago. And then they kept making exactly the same stone axes for 1 million years in the same place, using the same techniques. So they found a technology that was useful for them, but I think they lacked other pieces of technology that allow progress. Writing and perhaps Udacity are two examples of technology that would have allowed those groups to progress beyond the situation that they found themselves in. So there are many things, we can't escape the fact that we are physical human beings and we have certain physical needs, and it's that dictates fundamentally what our needs are and our desire to create technologies to satisfy those needs. But really, despite the fact that we have human bodies, the amazing thing about us is our minds. And anything we can do to further the improvement of our minds and to free our minds to do what minds are supposed to do, which is to learn, to dream, to invent, to communicate, that is, I think, technology at its best.
마무리 말씀해 주실까요?
Yeah, technology is, to me, always the thing we are not. And it tends to do much better in the thing that we are bad at, be it running really fast, shouting really loud, or living really long, and getting rid of diseases. So for me, technology is a force that really we use to make the world a better place. And it's most of all a democratizing force. It levels the playing field in the long run for all of us. Today, you can go to Google and know everything on the planet on everyone's phone. In the past, very few people were privy to have access to science and information. Today, everybody can, or most people can drive a car. In the past, moving around fast was a privilege of a few. Today, we can openly talk to each other on Twitter and Facebook. In the past, communication was much more controlled. So to me, technology is this wonderful thing that we can build, that lives with us, that evolves with us, and at the end of the day, makes the human race a much stronger race.
예, 두 분과의 대담은 여기에서 모두 마치도록 하겠습니다. 아주 통찰력 있는 기술의 미래에 대한 두 분 말씀 잘 들었습니다. Thank you.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.